Hello and welcome to West Bloomfield 911. I'm Officer Rick, and on behalf of the men and women of West Bloomfield PD, welcome to the show. We have a very special guest today, someone that you may be familiar with because she's a very important person in the law enforcement field, and I would like to introduce Barbara McQuade, the United States Attorney. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
It's so good to have you here, and I remember the first time we met, you were actually speaking at the Crime Prevention Association of Michigan, and you gave a wonderful demonstration, and I said, we have to get her on our show.
Well,
So thank you for being
up.
here.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to do a Corner Spotlight segment we do to honor and highlight a police officer or an employee of the police department, so don't run away. Folks, if you take a look on your screen, you will see the countenance of Police Officer Jeffrey Fletmeyer. Jeff works for the Road Patrol, and he's been with us now for a total of 13 years. Jeff started in December 2000 as a cadet, and in March of 2003, he was promoted to police officer. I asked Jeff what his favorite food was, and he said boneless chicken. And as far as books, he doesn't have a particular favorite, but he does have a particular genre that he enjoys. He loves action novels, and he loves books about police or SWAT. And I know he's into that. He's also one of our SRT members, and he's very good at it. His favorite movie is Bad Boys, a 1995 film starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And when I asked him about a favorite music, his music tastes are rather eclectic. He said, I like all types. Now, as far as accomplishments and hobbies, this young man loves watching and playing sports, and he enjoys playing softball, hockey, and golf. And if you ever see Jeff, he's in good shape. He takes care of himself, and what he says is true about all that. And as far as a quote, he said, you only live once. And I'll bet Jeff doesn't even know that that quote is a contraction of a quote by the famous Mae West, who was quoted as saying, you only live once. You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. So, Jeff, you're absolutely right. You only live once. Enjoy yourself, and we thank you for all you do. You are a great asset to the department, and I wish you many years of success and happiness and health here in West Bloomfield. Now, we're going to turn the Corner Spotlight off on Jeff, and today we don't have a safety tip, but we are going to talk about a dumb criminal. Now, I don't make these up, folks. This is in a national magazine. This is unbelievable what some of these people do. But on a particular day, this person was not one of the smart individuals. Most people realize and are smart enough to realize not to wave loaded weapons around the White House. And I just came back from DC, and I can attest to the fact that that's not a good idea with all the police around there. But Christopher Briggs wasn't one of those smart people. He was standing in the street just a few yards from the Oval Office when he started strapping on a .45 caliber pistol. Naturally, he got the attention of the Secret Service, and they instantly stopped him and found almost 200 rounds of ammunition in his backpack. Now, this young man, not one of the brightest crayons in the box, was mystified by his arrest, and he said, I was only going to fire a couple of shots. I'm sure that made the Secret Service feel very good that he was only going to fire a couple of shots. Now, Mr. Briggs, I'm sure you will be spending at least a couple of years in prison due to your antics and behavior. And do me a favor, stay in DC, don't come to Michigan, okay? Folks, we'll be right back with our very special guest, Barbara McQuade from the United States Attorney's Office. Stay tuned.
You're watching West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV, a service of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission. For more information or to watch episodes on demand, visit civiccentertv.com/WB911. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
The Michigan Sheriff's Association has been on the front line of providing education, training, and programs to Michigan communities since 1877. As the only organization to officially represent the Office of Sheriff in Michigan, the MSA works toward improving professional standards to better protect the citizens. To learn more about the Michigan Sheriff's Association, call 517-485-3135 or visit misheriff.org.
Hello and welcome back. We are with Barbara McQuade, the United States Attorney of the United States Attorney's Office here in Michigan. Barb, once again, welcome to
Thanks
the show.
very much.
You know what? And I told you offset, but just so the folks out there know, I first saw you when you came up to, I believe it was Traverse City at the time, and you spoke to the state convention for the Crime Prevention Association of Michigan. And you did a great job with the presentation, and I'm still affiliated with them, and I thank you very much for coming up there.
Oh, my pleasure.
It was a joy to have you there. And it is a pleasure to have you here. And I was looking at your bio, and you do have a very interesting position. I mean, you have handled so many high-profile cases that does it seem sometimes mundane to you because you come across all these high-profile cases?
No, every case is very interesting. Even the ones that are low profile are still really important because real people have been victimized and real offenders need to be brought to justice. So every case we handle is interesting in some way.
Yeah. Now, how long you've been? You were appointed in your current position by President Obama, but you've been affiliated with the United States Attorney's Office for quite a few years.
Started there in '98, and I've loved every minute of it. The people at the U.S. Attorney's Office are lawyers and other professionals who really just want to serve our community, and so it's just a pleasure to work with all of them to see the dedicated work that they do for the public.
Well, you know, you did mention that you handle a lot of cases that aren't high profile, but let's talk about one of the high profile ones that everybody's aware of, and that was with Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. Some people, I hear some people say, well, you know what, what's the big deal? Corruption in Detroit was going on for many years, and it was. He was not the first. In fact, I think I'd read where there was a mayor in the 30s out of Detroit who had served some prison time. Why is it important to make sure that public officials stay on the straight and narrow?
Well, I don't care if it goes on anywhere else or if it's ever gone on in Detroit. It's not going to go on anymore that we're aware of, whether it's Detroit or a suburb or any other part of the Eastern District of Michigan, because the citizens deserve better. You know, in that case, it was but helpful, I think, that the case went to trial because as a result, the citizens were able to see the evidence unfold through, you know, the daily media reports. But it was really, you know, sickening stuff. Extorting contracts worth $84 million. You know, that's money that Detroiters could have used for many other reasons. Taking donations that have been intended for seniors and the youth of Detroit and using it for personal things like golf clubs and yoga lessons and spa vacations. One of the jurors said, and I thought she summed it up very well, I voted for the former mayor twice because I believed in him, but what I saw in court made me sick to my stomach, and I felt it important to hold him accountable. And it is important because when corruption occurs and people know it's occurring, it discourages good people from getting involved. Who wants to be a contractor in that environment? Yeah. Who wants to run for public office in that environment? Who sees complying with the law as their duty when their elected leader isn't complying with the law? So for many reasons, it's very important to hold our leaders accountable so that we can open the doors for honest people who want to serve the people.
And that goes on every level, whether it's local, state, or national. I think that's important because, as you say, if people think your government's corrupt, then really what's the whole point of being honest yourself? You know, I think it encourages dishonesty when our leaders are dishonest.
Right, how can we expect people to comply with any law when the leaders themselves are not complying with the law?
Well, now, you've done a lot of work, not only with high-profile officials like the former mayor, but I saw in your bio here you were also part of the operation against the Al-Qaeda operative who tried to blow up the plane over Metro Airport a few years ago. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, or what you can?
Yeah, well, the first day I was on the job, got an email on my BlackBerry that we used in those days that an Al-Qaeda operative had tried to blow up a plane over Detroit Metro Airport on Christmas Day. He was the real deal, an Al-Qaeda operative who had accepted a mission to use this plastic bomb with powder explosives to blow up a plane over a U.S. airliner over U.S. soil. You know, when you go to the airport nowadays and you go through that body scanner where you put your hands over your head, you can thank Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib, the defendant in that case, because it was he who created the need for that. His bomb was sophisticated in that it would evade detection by metal detectors. There was no metal whatsoever. But he sought out and found Al-Qaeda in Yemen. He trained with them, and his mission was to blow up this bomb, blow up a plane with this bomb. lucky for us, he attempted to detonate the bomb as he is in the final descent over Detroit Metro Airport. The powders mixed when he pressed the plunger. A fire occurred, but the fire was supposed to ignite the explosives in his seat right on the wing next to the fuel that would have blown up the plane. But for some reason, it didn't work as intended, and we're so lucky. You know, I think sometimes we're accused of overstating, overemphasizing successful terrorist attacks like 9/11. You know, people say we talk too much about it. I don't know if we do or we don't. But I will tell you what I do think. I don't think we make enough of unsuccessful attempts. Right. If this guy had been successful and he came that close to being successful, he would have killed 289 people on that plane, and it would have landed on Woodhaven, Michigan, you know, right over in a residential area at about 11:30 a.m. on Christmas morning. We would be having the annual, you know, Christmas bomber remembrance ceremonies. You know, so we're very lucky, and the professionals who handled that case, again, from the FBI, from Customs and Border Protection, from the U.S. Attorney's Office, all together, who did a wonderful job of bringing him to justice, took him to trial. He ultimately pleaded guilty on his second day of trial once he saw all the evidence against him, and is now serving a life sentence in prison. So, you know, really proud of the work of our people in that case.
Well, you know what, and we should be. And that includes you as well, because really, even though the police, or in this case the federal police, law enforcement, make the arrest, it's got to go through the whole court system, and for us to be successful, we have to be able to put those people away, and that starts at the investigation up to, you know, the adjudication. So I thank you for what you do.
It takes a big team effort. You know, one interesting fact we learned about that case is that, you know, no one is ever safe from a terrorist attack. The reason we learned that he had selected Detroit is that plane tickets to the other cities, his first three choices, were too expensive. But he found one that he could afford, was the flight from Amsterdam to Detroit, which is why he targeted our city.
Oh boy. You know, I just flew to DC for Law Enforcement Week, and we had to go through one of those. And when I came out, the officer wanted to make an additional inspection, and I was wearing a hat, which I had forgotten I had it on, and he wanted to check under there. And then the way I guess my pant leg was situated, I don't know if he thought I was carrying something. But you know what? Fine, do what you gotta do. I know I didn't have anything, but I understand, and especially being in law enforcement, and you know what? You do what you have to do. And if people see that you're checking me and making sure we're safe, it gives them more comfort knowing they're going to be safe on a plane. I'm all for it. So, but you've also done other things that maybe people don't read about. For instance, you know, you work in violent crime and public corruption. We don't hear about violent crime. I mean, we do, but years ago when you used to see more of the federal government or police going after organized crime, now with terrorism, that seems to have gone to the background, but that still exists.
Absolutely. In fact, just last week we had the conviction of a loan shark organization that would lend money to people at 100% interest rate, and if and when they failed to make repayments, violence would be the consequence. And so that work is alive and well. We're also using our resources to go after violent gang activity. You know, in Pontiac, Detroit, Flint, and other areas, we find violent gang activity accounting for a lot of crimes. We recently announced a new initiative against carjacking to try to take those prosecutions federal, where we can get very long sentences. In fact, we've got some billboards up around town in Detroit and Flint, because we want the criminals to know that very long sentences can result.
Good, good. Now, you know, you talked about Flint, Pontiac, Detroit. Exactly what is your territory for Southeast Michigan?
Well, you know, we always use the hand map in Michigan. Right. It's essentially the eastern half of the Lower Peninsula. So we go as far west as Jackson, and then all the way down to the border with Ohio and up to the Mackinac Bridge.
Oh, okay. So you've got a lot of territory.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you know, we think about the big cities having their problems, but it isn't just big cities or industrial areas that have the problem. I'm sure in your position you see instances that occur in some of the more rural areas as well. We
do. We have crime occurring in rural areas and in suburban communities. You know, in fact, we've been trying to get out and talk with our residents in suburban communities about some of the crimes that get perpetrated against them, some of the fraud crimes, credit card fraud schemes, many of these internet fraud schemes, and so we've tried to raise awareness about people to help prevent them from becoming victims of those crimes.
You know, when I was working the street, it was funny when I was working here in West Bloomfield, and I would go to a house that maybe was B&E'd or they had stuff stolen out of their car, whatever the case may be, and they would sometimes say, geez, I didn't think that would happen in West Bloomfield. And I would tell them, well, you know, West Bloomfield is a beautiful community. In fact, it was recently named one of the 10 safest communities in Michigan to live in. And I'd say, well, you say here it says West Bloomfield, doesn't say heaven. If it were heaven, I'd be out of a job. So even in a suburb as nice as West Bloomfield, we occasionally have issues because criminals don't care about boundaries, do they?
Absolutely, and you know, especially in this era of the internet, when you can reach out and grab anybody, no matter where they are in the world. Some of the criminals involved in these internet fraud schemes may be in Europe, and yet they're the ones who are sending these emails that you get about, you know, you've won a contest, just wire me your bank account number and we'll send you your prize. But we really want to help raise awareness to prevent some of those crimes from occurring.
Well, good. I hope you do, because I know I get calls all the time when we're trying to do it on a local level as well. And it's interesting you talk about criminals coming from overseas. We just had a high-profile news session with Eric Holder, the Attorney General, on these Chinese that were stealing secrets from businesses. And I saw in here that you had also worked on the conviction of former employees that were stealing trade secrets from Detroit automakers. Tell me a little bit about that. Are they working independently? Are they working with other people overseas like these folks in China? How does that work?
Yeah, well, the new case that was announced yesterday talked about the government of China, but the two cases we had involved companies in China. So we had one case involving the Ford Motor Company, another involving General Motors, and in both instances they were fairly similar. We had employees who were engineers who had access to sensitive documents, in one case hybrid systems and another electrical systems. And these are systems that our local automakers have spent years investing in and building and researching and designing. And you know, now with the ability to store all that on a hard drive, which is what happened in this case, or an external thumb drive, you can download, you know, in seconds all these years of research and development. And so in both instances, they attempted to steal those documents to share them with rival companies in China, auto companies in China, who will have the benefit of not having to do all that work and yet get the same product. So in both those cases, we got convictions of those perpetrators and criminal sentences to prison. So we want to make sure that people understand that this corporate espionage is a very serious crime. You can't take this stuff because intellectual property has great value. General Motors valued the documents in their case at $40 million.
Oh, geez. Now, and these aren't necessarily this can be American-born people that are engaged in that. It doesn't necessarily have to be people who are immigrants coming to this country.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the financial incentives are very great for anyone, and they don't always go overseas. Sometimes they stay domestically. We had a case with an online mortgage provider that had set up a platform, and you know, someone left the company and took it with him to start up his own company. So, so certainly, you know, those crimes are domestic as well as international.
You've been in the attorney's office now for several years, but you originally started out working for a private law firm. What drew you to the public sector?
Well, I enjoyed my law firm experience very much. I was there for about 5 years and worked with wonderful people doing interesting things. But you know, what drew me to the public sector is really just the chance to feel like you're having some impact on your community. And I think most of us who work in public service, I'm sure you feel this way yourself. It feels good to feel like you are serving the public in some small way. You know, I don't know that we're going to change anything on a huge magnitude, but when you get justice for a victim, it feels really good. One of the cases I always found most satisfying was not a case that got any headlines whatsoever, but it was a letter carrier, a postal worker who had been stabbed on her route in Detroit while delivering mail. And bringing that offender to justice and just helping her reach that closure and go through that process was an incredibly satisfying experience for me. So just the ability to work and try to help victims, and you know, maybe you deter some crime when you get these sentences, having some impact on the community. You know, when you look back on a career, you want to feel like you used your skills to make a difference in your community.
You know, that's absolutely true, and I'm glad you said that. As you know, prior to you coming on, we had a postal inspector on, Wiley Christopher, and we had talked about that, him handling in these investigations of a postal carrier who may be assaulted or whatever. And of course, that does go through your court system because she's a federal employee.
Yes, yes. We handle, you know, all assaults of federal employees would be a federal offense that we would prosecute.
You know, I appreciate the work you guys do because, as I say, it doesn't stop on just a local level or a law enforcement level of making the arrest. We have to go through the judicial process, and I think it's important for us to have talented and qualified people such as yourself up there, because it would be incomplete if we didn't. But you also, to speak to your talent, you are the first woman to hold this position in Southeast Michigan. So you must have done something right to get the president's eye.
Well, I think being in the right place at the right time, it's an idea whose time had long been past, I think. There's certainly other U.S. attorneys who are women around the country, and I think it's a matter of time for women coming up through the ranks to be at the point in their career where they had that opportunity. But there are more and more. There are many now around the country, and I'm proud to have broken that barrier. But I am certain that many will follow, and I am determined to just do a good job, do my best, be effective, so that I will not close doors, but open them for other women.
Well, I don't think there's any concern about that, and it's always good to be the first. And as you said, I'm sure you won't be the last. Now, your husband also works in this field, correct?
Yes, he's also a prosecutor, so he's currently on detail to the Northern District of Ohio in Toledo, so that I don't have the unenviable task of supervising him. But he's obviously a great supporter and a great partner to be able to make that sacrifice for me.
Absolutely. And when you both go home at night, you can tell him about your pressures and what you went through, because he certainly understands, and vice versa.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Now you have several children. You have 4 of them.
I do.
Do you hope that they follow in your footsteps and in your husband's footsteps?
No, I always say I hope that they'll find an honest living instead. No, whatever it is they want to do, I want them to pursue their dreams. I hope that they find careers that are as satisfying as I found mine. But everybody's got to find their own way. So,
sure, absolutely.
But I hope they find some career that they find equally satisfying and also gives back to the community.
Well, that's kind of what I did with my kids as well. Now mine are a little older; they're all in their 20s now. But I did not encourage any of them to enter law enforcement, but I didn't discourage it. I figured if they found it on their own and that's what they wanted, I certainly would support them. As the head of your agency, and I saw in your bio that you had restructured the office, because times do change. What do you see as the future for your office? Do you, as far as what becomes important, or where we are going to need to focus attention? Yeah,
one of the things I think is it is important to make sure that your attorney resources are aligned with your priorities, and that's going to change. It needs to be nimble. Cybercrime a much more significant threat than in the past. One of the things that we created was a healthcare fraud unit, because we're seeing so much healthcare fraud. Doctors, pharmacists, clinic owners who are billing Medicare for medical services that are never provided. They may, in exchange for some prescription drugs that people are addicted to and want desperately, people may come in and sign some forms that said they received this sort of treatment, and then the doctors will bill Medicare. The most egregious example is one where we've got a doctor who administered chemotherapy to patients who did not have cancer, as alleged in an indictment. That case will come to trial soon. So there are a number of healthcare fraud schemes. So that's just one example of the way we have to evolve based on the schemes that we're seeing. So terrorism and national security, I think, is here for a while.
Foreseeable future, anyway.
Public corruption, I wish I could say, has gone away with the conviction of Kwame Kilpatrick, but it seems to be human nature is a powerful force, and I don't know that that's going away anytime soon. And of course, violent crime continues to be a serious challenge in many parts of our community. So those are the things we focus on now. Hate crimes is another area that we're focusing on. I think we were very alarmed by the shooting at the Jewish Center in Kansas that occurred a month or so ago, and we want to make sure that those kinds of hate crimes are things that we're just keeping an eye out for to prevent those kinds of crimes from occurring.
Do you, it's hard to tell sometimes whether those things are on increase or decrease, because to a certain extent, there may seem like there's an increase if people are more attuned to reporting those sort of things. What is your gut feeling? Do you think hate crimes are down or up, or is it something that just fluctuates?
I think we're better at reporting it, so I think it appears to be up. I don't know if it's really up or if we're just more sensitive to it, but nonetheless, it remains a significant threat, and so we want to make sure that we're doing all we can to not just prosecute perpetrators after the crime occurs, but make sure that we're doing a good job of raising awareness so that we can prevent those kinds of crimes from occurring.
Sure. Well, you talk about that one in Kansas several years ago. There was one in L.A. where a lone wolf went in and shot up the Jewish community center there and killed some people. I was on our SWAT team at the time, and all I heard on the radio was shooting at the Jewish Community Center, and I'll tell you, that was not a good feeling, thinking it was, ours. And not that I was happy it happened out there, but I was glad it didn't happen locally anyway. So, but yeah, we have to be ever vigilant, don't we? So, we only have a couple of minutes. Is there something you'd like to tell the public about contacting your office, or some information you'd like to get out before we close?
Sure, we do have a citizens tip hotline, 313-226-9151. And if you ever believe that you've been the victim of a crime or witness to a crime, we really encourage citizens to come forward with that information. In law enforcement, as you know, we rely on tips from our citizens to make our cases. And in some parts of our community, sometimes there's this no snitch mentality where people don't want to get involved, or maybe they're afraid. We have resources to protect you, and we need that information to keep our community safe, because if you don't report a crime, someone else will be victimized, and it might even be you.
That's right. You want to give that number one more time?
Sure, it's 313-226-9151.
Thank you, Barb. And if you don't mind, we'd like to take time to honor a fallen officer. And in my opinion, these are American heroes who deserve the recognition. And so don't run away. Folks, if you would, please remember in your thoughts and in your prayers, Mr. John M. McCutch of the St. Clair County Sheriff's Dive Team. Mr. McCutch died in the line of duty on May 1st, 2011. He suffered a massive heart attack during a training session at the Port Huron YMCA, and he was very accomplished in what he was doing. He'd been a member of the dive team since 1991. He was certified in search and rescue diving, ice diving, and in 2009 he earned his Dive Master certification. Mr. McCutch also was a United States Coast Guard licensed captain. He taught navigation, boat handling, and sonar operations, so he was very talented and very much an asset to the St. Clair County Sheriff's Office. So if you would, please remember in your thoughts and your prayers this great American hero who served the community of St. Clair County. He also was survived by his wife Eileen, whom he was married to for 28 years, his daughter, and his son. And so we ask you to keep him and his family, the other officers of the St. Clair County Sheriff's Office, in your thoughts and your prayers as we bid farewell to dive team member John McCutch of the St. Clair County Sheriff's Office. Brother, you shall not be forgotten. Once again, we'd like to thank for coming on our show, Barbara McQuade. Thank you once again for
Thanks
coming
very much for
on.
having me.
She is the United States Attorney for the United States Attorney's Office here in Southeast Michigan. She's doing great work, and we commend her for all she does. We thank you for watching, and we ask you to keep us tuned on the telly. If you miss us on the telly, remember you can go to civiccentertv.com and watch us on demand at your convenience. On behalf of Chief Mike Patton and the men and women of the West Bloomfield Police Department, thank you for watching. Remember, folks, take care of yourself, be safe. Tomorrow's promised to no one, and we'll see you again on West Bloomfield 911.